Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you my process for starting Delphinium by seed. So let's go. Delphinium, also known as Larkspur, has a reputation for being a hard to grow plant. It's a perennial in zones 3 through 7. Since I live in zone 5B, it's definitely considered a perennial here in my zone. In warmer climates, it's considered a short-lived perennial. So in those climates, you want to sow the seeds in the late summer or early fall in order to enjoy spring blooms. You often find delphinium in a cottage garden type of setting, and you'll find it in colors such as white, pink, or blues, and even purples. What I like about this plant is that it can be a very tall plant, so you will find it often in the middle to the back of a border. You'll find delphinium in different heights. They can be as short as 1 foot to as tall as 6 feet. Keep in mind, the taller the plant, the more it requires staking, because you don't want such a beautiful plant to grow and then topple over. So when I'm going to be growing these particular delphinium, I'll be sure to stake them. Delphinium bloom from spring to early summer, and they thrive in full sun to part sun conditions. I did a lot of research on the plant, and what I found is that as the plant gets bigger, it creates what's called a taproot, and that makes this plant difficult to move. So when I do plant it out in my landscape, I'm going to make sure I plant it in a place where it's going to stay, and I don't want to have to transplant it afterwards. And did you know that this plant attracts pollinators as well as butterflies and hummingbirds? That makes it a very attractive type of plant to have in your garden. And even though this plant can be a focal point in your garden, you can also cut from it. In other words, if you're making a nice, beautiful arrangement of cut flowers, delphinium is a great candidate as a cut flower. This plant is considered deer as well as rabbit resistant, which is really nice. And while this plant is drought tolerant, one thing that I read up on was that it does like a nice, rich, organic soil. It needs to be well drained, but when I do plant this out in my landscape, I'm going to make sure that I put a small amount of compost in each planting hole. As a word of caution, this plant is considered toxic, so you don't want to be ingesting any parts of this plant. I remember seeing delphinium in the nurseries last year, and I thought about buying it. It was really expensive. There are just certain plants that can be quite pricey, and delphinium is definitely considered one of those plants, which is a big reason why I wanted to try to grow it from seed. And every year I like to challenge myself with growing a plant that I've never grown before, and especially if it's known to be hard to grow, I want to push myself and see if I can do it. So this will be a good test to see how these plants do from now through the spring into the summer. There are a few plants out there that require a cold, wet, or moist stratification period. Many times perennials that are native to your area need that type of environment. And when you think about it, when you have a perennial and it drops its seeds and it gets the rain and it gets the freeze thaw cycle, those seeds will germinate in such an environment. Delphinium is definitely one of those plants that needs that type of cold, moist stratification. And I think as gardeners, that's something that maybe we don't consider. We just buy the packet of seeds, we plop it into some potting mix or soil, and then we wonder why the seeds hardly germinated. If you're planning to grow delphinium from seed indoors, you want to plant them about 6 to 8 weeks before your frost date. My average last frost date is May 15th. And right now we are in the middle of March, so it's a perfect time for me to be sowing these seeds. And when it comes to planting your delphinium seeds, you want to plant them about 1/4 of an inch deep into your potting mix or your seed starting mix. My experience has been some seeds germinate super quickly. That has not been my experience with delphinium. Delphinium can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to germinate. So you want to be very patient. The patience will pay off. This is a beautiful plant and it's well worth the wait. In general, the delphinium plant as well as the delphinium seeds like a nice cool environment. So this is a plant that when grown from seed likes the soil temperature of about 65 to no more than 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you put these plants on a heat mat and the heat mat is 80 or 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that is just way too hot and your seeds will not germinate or do well. The variety of delphinium that I'm growing from seed this year is called Pacific Giant Mixed Colors. It's really beautiful. and I'm looking forward to having this in my garden this year. So what I did was I had taken a small Ziploc bag and I took a paper towel. I pre-moistened the paper towel and I made sure that it was moistened enough that the full paper towel was wet. But when I tried to go like this with the bag, it wasn't dripping with water. And that's very important. If there's too much water in here, it can rot the seeds. And if there's not enough water in here, then the seeds are not going to germinate. So I just made sure that it was just enough to saturate that paper towel, but then I dripped out any excess water from my bag. And I have researched that some people prefer to use something like a coffee filter. So you can use either of those methods and either of them will work for you. And then what I did was I sprinkled the seeds on top of the moist paper towel, and then I sealed the Ziploc bag and I put the Ziploc bag in my refrigerator. I actually just put it in the bottom drawer of my refrigerator. I figured that's the coolest place in my fridge. It's nice and crisp, and I left it there. And I put this bag in my refrigerator on February 8th. Today is March 12th, so some time has passed. I only kept it in my refrigerator for 1 week. And I had a lot of success leaving it in there for 1 week. I had planned to leave it in there anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, but 1 week seemed to do the trick. So then I removed this bag out of the fridge on February 15th, and I put it under my LED shop or LED grow lights. And I kept it there still with the seeds in the bag, still with the bag sealed, but I wanted the seeds to start getting a little bit of light. And then I checked the bag almost daily. And as soon as I noticed that the seeds were sprouting, meaning they were just getting a little white tail on them, I removed those seeds individually from the bag and I placed them in my potting mix here. And this potting mix was already pre-moistened. I wanted to make sure I was giving the seeds the best environment that they could have just to start growing. Now keep in mind, when I removed this from the fridge and put it under my LED shop lights, it took another 1 to 2 weeks before I even started seeing the seeds starting to sprout. And to this day, there are still seeds in here that have not sprouted, and a few of them in here that I left for today's video just barely sprouted a few days ago. And that's what I mean by you need to be patient. It can take a number of weeks by the time you take the seeds out of your refrigerator and put them in a warmer environment for those seeds to sprout. So just as long as you're patient and give it time, you will have some success with this method. So what I'm planning to do with these seedlings is I will be potting them up as soon as they get their first true leaf, because I don't want to wait too long. I don't want them to be in these small little cell packs and get that taproot. So I will be potting them up into probably 3-inch pots as soon as they get their first true leaf. So what I'll do right now is I'm going to take you in for a closer look just so you can see how the seedlings are looking that I have so far. And I'll also show you in this bag a couple of seeds that have sprouted and my process for just removing them from the bag and then putting them into this potting mix. You can see here that I have a number of 6 cell packs in this tray. So technically there should be 72 plants in here. And I did plant a seed in each of these cells already. Some of the seeds, even though they had sprouted in the bag, just have not come up through the soil. So the seedlings have not sprouted through the soil yet. And honestly, there might be a situation or 2 or 10 where the seeds have rotted inside the soil already. Again, Delphinium are very, very choosy and picky plants. And I am honestly happy with the number of plants that I have here. I counted them up, and between this tray here, as well as some additional 6 cell packs that I have approximately 50 plants. And by the end of the season, if I have even a dozen plants that survive, I am feeling very happy with this process. And I just want to show you close up what the plant looks like. And these leaves that are here are called the cotyledons. And as soon as I see the first true leaf appear, which comes after the cotyledon leaves, I will then take each plant out of the cell pack and I will pot them up into 3-inch pots. And then my plan is to take the plant and bring it outside where it's cooler. Delphinium do like it cool. And my house is generally on the warmer side. I want to give these plants the best chance of success. And you can see with this plant here, it's just barely starting to show its first set of true leaves. For right now, I'm just bottom watering these. I'm not giving them any fertilizer. I will start fertilizing them with a half strength diluted fertilizer as soon as they start showing me the first set of true leaves. And over here are just some additional Delphinium plants that have come up. So again, I have quite a few. I have close to 50 plants here. So I'm not going to prick these out and move them into open cells. I want to wait and see if anything sprouts in here. Here is the Ziploc bag that had the wet paper towel in it. It's a little dirty because I've been reaching in there and grabbing seedlings out of here. So what I'm going to do is pull out 1 or 2 seeds from this bag here that have little white tails on them, just so you know what to look for. You can see that there's the seed and there's the little white tail. I should have probably planted this a day or 2 ago, but it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and plant it today with you, just so you can see the process. So what I'm going to do is plant that seed in this corner right over here. I'm going to make a hole and go ahead and just put that seed in this hole right here. And what will happen is the plant will then emerge through the soil. If that seed was showing some green leaves on it, I definitely would have then planted in such a way so that the green leaves were above the soil line. But it wasn't showing any green leaves, so what it'll do is it will then reach for the light. Okay, so here's another one. You can see that there's the white tail, and that's where the roots are going to form. There's the seed, and it's just barely showing a little bit of green. And so what we're going to do is we're going to plant the root part down below the soil, and this part right here where it's brown, just above the soil. We can plant that one right over here. At this point, I'm okay having them share a cell because I just don't want to create any more 6-packs. And I think that the plants will be fine sharing a cell. I like to use the back of my pen just to push down on the soil. And this is just a potting mix that I created myself, but you can buy your own potting mix if you want to as well. Here's another one. And again, you can see that it's just starting to get the green leaves above the top here. And there's where the root is, and that's going to go under the soil. The green part will go above the soil. I have a few more in my bag here. I can do that later, but at least I wanted to do a few together with you just so you could see my process for doing these. I'm all about experimenting. And one thing that I had done when I had taken my Ziploc bag out of the fridge was I kept the Ziploc bag under my LED shop lights, but I also took some seed starting mix, put it in this restaurant to go container that has drainage holes in the bottom of it. And then I planted a bunch of the seeds into the seed starting mix. And I have to tell you that while the germination was okay in this container here, I found that the germination was better by just leaving the seeds in the Ziploc bag with the moisture and not putting it immediately into the seed starting mix. But that was just my experience. I wanted to share, what my experiment found. So in the future, I will just do the same method that I did this year with just keeping it in the Ziploc bag. Now the key is though, as soon as you start seeing the white tail, you want to remove it and go ahead and put that seed in seed starting mix. You don't want to wait too long. You don't want the seed or the seedling to rot. You don't want the root to get so long that it's then getting caught inside of your paper towel. So that's what I would recommend, is make sure you're removing the little seed that has sprouted and putting it in your potting mix immediately after you see some life in here. And then my other big tip, again, is be patient. Don't give up on what's in the bag, because a week or 2 weeks might go by and all of a sudden another seed has sprouted. So even though I still have seeds left in here and it's not that the paper towel is not looking great, I'm not going to give up hope on these guys. I'd love to hear from you. Have you grown Delphinium from seed? And if so, what has been your process? I know some people have told me that winter sowing has worked for them, and I'd love to know, did you cover your seeds or did you surface sow them? Because in the past, when I surface sowed them, I did not have great luck. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 seeds germinate that way. So I'd love to hear what process has worked or not worked for you. And if you're going to try Delphinium from seed, please let me know. And what method are you going to use? I hope you found this content helpful. And if you did, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. If you feel that this content would be helpful to anyone else, please share my channel with them as well. And I will happily give you updates on these Delphinium plants and my process for potting them up, hardening them off, and planting them out in the landscape. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.